Hi, this is my 3D router pantograph. I call it a 3D router pantograph because in addition to controlling X and Y, you can also control the depth of cut because it has a rigid frame and a tilting mount on the back so that you can use it to copy 3D objects and do other 3D effects. And in this video, I'm going to go through the construction of this machine. I put together a very detailed set of plans, and I'm using those plans in this video to construct the pantograph. I started by printing one-to-one templates of my router mounts, pasting those together into a big sheet, and then gluing that onto a piece of 3/4 inch thick birch plywood, and then cutting all that stuff out on the bandsaw. If you work carefully and have a fine blade in the bandsaw, it's possible to follow lines with surprising accuracy. I cut all the straight pieces out from hard maple. Here I'm marking all the positions for all the holes that I need to drill for all the pivots in the pantograph. Now the holes that I drilled ended up being very tight for a piece of 3/8 inch rod. So I made a sort of reamer out of 3/8 inch rod, which I'd use to expand the holes a little bit so that the shaft fits more easily. I made that reamer by cutting a lengthwise slot near the end of one of my pieces of 3/16 inch steel shaft. All the parts for the pantograph were just butt joined together with glue. It's not a high stress application, so that's actually quite adequate. I do have to be very careful getting everything reasonably lined up. Clamps often cause things to slip, so weighing things down instead of clamping actually helps a lot. Now which way does this part go on again? Let's check that against the one-to-one drawings. Okay, now I know. Again, weighing things down for clamping. It's useful to have a little bit of exercise equipment around. Comes in handy in the shop. To get the other half of my links aligned, I actually put pieces of my steel rod in there, and that really helps line things up as I squeeze it together. Now just check that with a square. Yeah, it looks good. And here's the bottom half of my router mount all glued up. The holes in my router mount were also very tight, so I reamed those out a little bit to make it easier to assemble the whole thing. I'm using 4 3/16 inch steel rods to go in all the shaft holes. That way I have more pins to line things up as I assemble it. Now let's check that with a square. That looks good. So let's pry that apart a bit again so I can get some glue in there. Looks alright. So now let's clamp that thing together. Reaming out both holes together kind of makes up for any misalignment there might be between the two of them, and that way the shaft slides in there nice and easily. Here's my fixed mount for the pantograph. Now the fixed mount is actually on the pivoting axis, which is what gives the pantograph its third dimension. The whole mount is just made out of a few pieces of plywood glued together without any dowels or anything. Now I have to put the pantograph links into the fixed mount. Now this part is a bit tricky because you have to get the orientation just right. I actually had to film this several times because I got it wrong the first time. So here's sticking my shaft in there. It's a little bit sticky, but that's okay for it to be a bit tight. And now pushing the shaft all the way through. Now putting the router mount link in there. This part is also a bit tricky to make sure you have the right holes. I've actually misassembled my own quite a few times, but this is the correct way for the 1/2 magnification. Now here's adding the pin for tracing my actual pattern, And I've got a locking knob on there where I can set the height of it, which also sets how deep my router cuts. There's a few chamfers that need to be cut out of the mechanism here and there to get the full range of motion. It's easiest to just not cut these, and then once the thing is put together, look at where it bumps and cut it out with a knife. So here's the pantograph in 1/2 scale magnification. So let's switch that over to the 1/3 position. So we just have to take out 2 of the pins. Now with the pins out, the mount just slides diagonally, and then we put the pins in the other set of holes. And now the thing is configured for 1/3 magnification. So here's the pantograph all done. I'll make more videos showing all the things that this thing can do. And if you want to build an exact copy of it, I do have a set of plans available on my website that you can buy.